Folks, let me just tell you something right now. You are in for a treat. We are lucky enough to get some time with someone I put on the Mount Rushmore of real estate investors. He goes by lots of names. I call him a friend, Mr. Bill Allen. How you doing, buddy?
Very good. I feel like I blush every time you say that. I don't know why, but it's very flattering.
Well, just so you know, I've actually had people ask me who is on my Mount Rushmore, so I actually took the time to write it down this morning. Obviously, Mr. Bill Allen, the late and great Sam Zell. I put Ken McElroy, who actually I've been lucky enough to speak with as well, and Jonathan Gray. If you don't know who Jonathan Gray is, he's actually the gentleman at Blackstone, who is the number one real estate guy. So those are my four real estate investors, two of which I've been lucky enough to speak with. Sam Zell has a great book called Am I Being Too Subtle? Go get it. And then maybe someday I'll speak with Jonathan Gray. So that's the list, Bill. You're on it.
Wow, that's not what I expected. Wow, that's incredible. I'll take it. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about why you're there, right? I've been lucky enough to be doing this about 30 years. The last 10 years or so, I've rubbed shoulders with lots of different real estate investors, some getting started, some big, some folks who fancy themselves gurus and educators, and maybe some has-beens and, all of that. What I've seen with you, again, following you long before we ever spoke, was someone who takes action, someone who's not afraid to pivot, someone who gets proof of concept and learns, and someone who's not afraid to bet on themselves. There's a lot of points of failure that lots of folks go through. And I don't know if it's your military background. I don't know if I've heard you tell your story about being raised by your father and your mom. There's just a lot naturally in you that I don't know that you appreciate. Um, but it is so much fun to watch. And what you've built with Future Flipper and your events that you're hosting, it all just piles on with all the goodness that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I appreciate that. I think, I've been working really hard to try to figure out what my superpower is, like everybody's got something that they have a massive competitive advantage. And what I boiled it down to recently is just speed of decisions. I think can make decisions faster than any other person that I'm ever competing with or anybody that I'm running side by side with. And what that does is it allows me to get a head start, especially in the beginning. And so I think so many people struggle with this, like decision making and how to decide on something. And that's the thing that I've been working on the past year is to try to figure out like how can I teach that? How can I train it into people? Like you said, I think the military helped me a lot in making decisions, and a lot of that stuff it's totally trainable skill. So that's something I was just thinking the other day, like that's it. It's the fact that I can make decisions faster than anybody else, and I get a jump. I get 2 to 3 step head start. Can you imagine you're doing like a 100 meter
Yeah,
dash in the Olympics and you get a head start? Like you're going to win
exactly.
every race. So I
Yeah,
think that's it.
yeah. No, I just sitting here taking that in. I think you're right. And again, I want to be clear. It's not that your decisions are always right. It's you make them with convictions, and you are humble enough to pivot change as you're collecting real time information.
Yep.
It's that combination, right? I've known some people who make pretty quick decisions and then they hit a roadblock and they sit down. Well, that's
Yep.
not helpful. Like, okay, you're going to do a 100-meter dash. You're going to start at, 20 meters or 20 yards, but then you get to the 50-meter and you get a cramp. You sit down, you never finish, right? It's that combination of quick decision, consume information, consume the proof of concept in real time. And, it's not a straight line. You've seen those graphs about what people think success is. It's a straight line and it's all these little
Yeah.
squiggly things. It doesn't bother you. You just keep moving forward. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. And for everybody that's watching this, you're watching this right now. It's frequently, actually, I'm frequently wrong, almost always wrong.
And
And
you're
so
okay with it. You don't beat yourself up.
yeah, but some of the decision is right. Like some of the hypothesis, this like educated guess that I make before I go is like some of that is right, but part of going is like figuring out what's right and wrong. And then, like you said, iterating it.
Yeah.
Naval Ravikant said this, there's like this quote, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule. You've heard of this probably,
Mm-hmm.
this 10,000 hours, takes 10,000 hours to get to mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Naval Ravikant said something that I really love. He said, it's not 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations. And so
Ah,
when I heard that, I was like, man, that's it. Like, I really feel like you got to iterate over and over and over again. And so most people, it's just like, how do we just take the first step? So hopefully some encouragement today of like, I'm frequently wrong, actually, almost always somewhat wrong about what I think is going to happen. but that's like you have to gather new information. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels, and that's where most people get stuck.
Yeah, and again, there's nothing like getting started and actually having real facts as opposed to opinions, right? A lot of people get started and then they create a decision tree and it's all opinions. It's not real life, and usually it's something that's not even on the list. And yeah, getting to proof of concept and being okay being wrong, but going fast, it is definitely your superpower. I think you've found it. So let's give some people some four examples, right? Let's go back to Bill Allen, not the real estate investor. What were you doing? What was the itch that you had to scratch to make that first decision? Where was Bill in his life then?
You like go back before real estate?
Yeah,
I
before
was
what were you
I
doing?
was I was flying airplanes and helicopters for the Navy. So I went to flight school and started learning how to fly aircraft. And I think that's really where I got my, in school, I was a mechanical engineer. I got an aeronautical engineering master's degree before flight school. Some of that, like schooling, like high level schooling and advanced education, there's a little bit of that, but not a lot. But
Yeah,
in aviation, that was it. Like decision making in aviation, that's like life or death type decisions.
yeah,
So that's where a lot of my training came from. It's not just book work and studying, it's actually like practicing and doing. So
yeah,
simulation,
yep,
question and answer with instructors, actually getting put yourself in scenario-based training, like different scenarios that you would go
yeah,
through on the ground. Practice. I would be sitting in a chair and like practicing the motions that I would have to go through and verbalizing and thinking through things. And then we would like play ping pong and try to recite emergency procedures, like the aircraft caught on
yeah,
fire, try to hit a ping pong ball. So like this kind of like
yeah,
practice and repetition and stuff like that was very much part of my life for like 20, I don't know, at least 15 years before I got into real estate. So I was punching a clock. I was a W-2
yeah,
employee for the government,
yep.
getting deployed, moving every 9 to 12 months, pretty much. I moved 18 times in the last 20 years. So that was my life. And I think that
Wow.
helped too. I think that
Yeah.
helped too. You're moving around to different places. You're getting used to change. I didn't live in one house for 20 years. I didn't have one job. I moved around. I had to meet new people. I had to be in uncomfortable situations. I had to do a lot of that stuff. Pack up my whole house, come up with like solving more complex problems of do I get a mover to come in? Do I move myself? How much more money am I going to make? All this stuff.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you're still watching this, I want to let you know about a very special link in the description below. Bill Allen interviewed me right before Christmas, and there is a link below which you can watch. We're going to talk about things that I have never talked about before. It was almost an hour long. So if you want to know the behind the scenes secrets of Mr. Michael Zuber and one rental at a time, check the link below. Go to Bill Allen's YouTube channel, give it a watch, and trust me, you will see things and hear things that you have never heard me share in the 5 years we've been doing it. So check out the link, subscribe to Bill Allen's channel. You won't be disappointed. All right, Bill. So you were a flyer. You moved 18 times. When did that itch or inkling of real estate pop in your head? Was it a friend, a buddy, an event? Where did that first light bulb go? Hey, I need to check this out.
Yeah, so my parents weren't in real estate. I never really kind of grew up with that. We lived in really, a couple houses. My dad was in the Navy too. But when I was in college, I was at Georgia Tech and I was in ROTC. So we had to wear a uniform a couple days a week. If you've been to college, you may have seen some of those guys
Yep.
marching around, doing like running in the morning at 5 a.m. That was me. And I had a commanding officer there who said he bought a house in every place that he ever lived and he moved a lot. He was another aviator and he never lost money. So that kind of like planted the seed of real estate that one day I'll be interested in it. I'll do something with it. So I just remembered that. And eventually, when I stopped moving every 9 to 12 months, I wish I did it right away. I wish I bought houses right away. But I moved to California to San Diego. I bought that first house. And then when I got deployed, I rented out that condo that I bought in San Diego. And then I moved to Pensacola. I bought a house there and fixed it up. And I lived there when I was in Pensacola, and then when I moved to England, I rented that house out. So now I had a couple rental properties, and I started seeing. It wasn't when I got one. When I got one, I was like, okay, I'm really not seeing a big difference in my income.
Right.
But when I started tracking my net worth, so I track my net worth every single month. And the equity was building up in the houses way faster than my equity was
Mm-hmm.
building up in the stock market because I was investing heavily in the stock market. Almost like 100% of my money was in the stock market then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started seeing this. And then when I got my second one, I started seeing more income, like more monthly income that was actually affecting my bank account. My bank account was going up faster than I was spending. And I don't spend a ton of money. But now they started stacking. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll do another one. So then I bought a third rental house when I moved back from England. The whole time I was in England, I was researching the new duty station I was going to be, back in Maryland. And then I bought a rental house in Maryland, fixed it up, rented it out. Now I had three, and it was
Mm.
really starting to stack. And my net worth
Wow.
was going up a ton. And I was like, wow, real estate is something that can really make me wealthy way faster than these other traditional means that people, well, traditional people think they're traditional. They're really not.
Mhm.
Um, and so that, and then I got married. We got had our first baby, and I was like, okay, now I got two mouths to feed. Now I have three mouths to feed. I need to go faster. And real estate
Yeah.
was a vehicle that I could go faster in. So then
Mm.
I flipped my first house, and then I bought another rental and another rental and another rental. And then I flipped another house. And it just started to become something that I was really interested in because it was really helping me financially. And that's what it was
Yeah.
all about. I kind of
And
fell in love financially with real estate.
what year was that first purchase in San Diego? Do you remember roughly?
Yeah, I do. I know exactly when it was. It was in May of 2006.
Oh,
So
you
yeah.
ticked the top of the market.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. And we can talk about that forever if you want. Like I bought it for 385 and I sold it for 200.
Oh,
So so
ouch.
that was my first entry into real estate. However, the Army had a plan called HAP program, Housing Assistance Program. And so if you bought during the peak and then they forced you to move during the crash, they would bail you out at
Mm.
almost like 100% of what you paid for it. So
Okay.
I actually got really lucky. They bailed me out. I had a friend help me sell that property.
Mm.
My friend really pushed me. He was my realtor. He really pushed me to do it, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
Because I was losing $750 a month on that house as I was renting it
Right.
out down the road
Right.
after the crash. So it just wasn't sustainable for me.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it bailed me out. And I didn't, most people would get frustrated, say this doesn't work and quit. And in 2009, I bought my second house.
Right.
And then in 2012, I bought the third house. So that's kind
Yeah.
of
So you ticked the top and you ticked the bottom.
in 2000, I wish that 2009 was the bottom. I actually paid like it was still kind of coming down. Pensacola
Okay.
didn't really feel it as hard
Oh,
as
okay.
everywhere else.
All right.
And so I paid way more than I
Okay.
should have for that house, but it was my time. I was moving. I didn't want to rent. At that point, I was like, renting a house is out of my, I'm never doing
Yeah.
that again.
Never do it
Never.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Very, very cool. All right. So let's talk about Bill Allen gets this taste of flipping, right? Flipping is you're still a full-time aviator. Tell us the story of the first one, right? When did
Oh,
you
at
go
that
to
time.
flipping? Yeah.
Yeah, at that time I was still, yeah, full-time pilot. I got back from England. I was engaged to my wife. I had just bought my second or my third rental house.
Yep.
I had fixed up the downstairs, the 1,000 square foot basement. I finished it myself in 6 weeks, me and my wife. She was pregnant at the time, and we rented that house out. And then I was looking for my next rental property.
Mm.
So I was looking for my next rental. I probably had like another year, about a year left, a year and a half left at my duty station in Maryland. And so my realtor and I went out and looked for another rental property. I found one. It was on Hubzu. Um,
Mm. Yeah,
it
I
was
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's Exome now or vice versa. It was an
Something like that.
auction website.
Yep. Hmm.
And I remember this like it was yesterday because I was at my engagement ceremony in Nashville when we found out that we got like I was bidding on it
Oh,
online and I won it.
nice.
And I was like, I had to
Nice.
close in like a couple days and wire the money, and I didn't have the money. So I was like, oh crap.
Now I gotta go
And I
find the
never seen
money.
the house. I never seen the house. My realtor went and looked at it. She said it was nice. We could do it. Never seen the
Okay.
house, and I just
All
bought it
right.
and just jumped.
All right.
The numbers
Again,
worked as
this.
a rental,
Yeah. Yeah.
worked really good. And
Okay.
but then she came to me and she said, "Hey, you could fix this house up and sell it and make pretty good money."
Hmm.
And so she
Okay.
wanted a second commission, but she kind of gave me the idea of what if you flip this? And
Okay.
I was like, okay, I've been watching these flipping TV shows, so and I know how to
Looks
fix up a house.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it looked easy. And we had done it before.
Right.
I'd fixed two houses before for rentals.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I mean, that could be cool. Let's try that. So I fixed it up differently. I fixed it up really
A
nice.
little nicer. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me about 6 months to get this thing sold, like get it finished, listed, sold, but we made $43,000 on it. And that
Hmm.
was like half of my salary for the year. being a pilot. I was a test pilot for the Navy in Pax River, Maryland, in Patuxent River Naval Air Station.
A lot less risky. That being a test pilot doesn't sound like it sounds risky to me.
yeah. So yeah, yeah, for sure. I've been in
Yeah,
a couple of close calls
there you
in
go.
the helicopter and airplane. So we did that and we made, 43 grand. And I was like, wow, what if I could do this again? Like,
Yeah,
is this a
some is
fluke?
good, more is better.
Yeah. And so now I have 43,000 and again, at this point, every month I'm looking at my net worth go up, tick up and up and up. And I just went up
Nice.
$43,000. And I was like,
Mm.
that's a lot of money. Like that was
Yeah,
probably like, 10% or of my net worth or so at that point.
yeah, probably. Yeah,
And no more expenses. Like I'm still living off of my military salary. I still have a W-2 income, so I'm not using this money for anything. And so I said, let's see if we can do this again. Let's go find another one. We looked. We made a ton of offers,
hmm
ton of offers. Oh, back to that house, by the way. I'd never seen it before. When I walked in for the first time, there was a foot of water in the basement and active termites eating the hardwood floor when I walked in the front door. So the first time I ever saw this house after I bought it and came back from Nashville, my realtor was like, "Oh, it's a great deal." And I was in like way over my head. Just if anybody, what you're listening to this going, oh, like this guy knows what he's doing. Like, no, no, no.
no, plenty of
That was
mistakes.
all stuff I never had to deal with before.
Yeah,
Is termite treatment, figuring out how water is flooding into the basement,
yeah,
like what's
some
happening.
pumps, all that stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
very cool, very cool.
And then so
And
we
again,
looked for
you,
another property after that.
yeah, and again, this is all back to quick decisions and moving forward, learning the lessons, because of course, you're learning the lessons as you go and keep going. So some is good, more is better. You keep doing the work. Sounds like you go a while before finding the next opportunity, I think is where we are in the story.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, I also didn't like flip that house in an LLC. I was so
Ah,
confused. I didn't know how to start an LLC. I'd never done that before. So I
right.
just did it my own name. Like I just
Yeah.
didn't know what I didn't know. I just was going. So,
Right.
yeah, it took me a few months. We were looking for properties in Maryland, but then I found out I was moving to Pensacola about like 6 months later. So
Okay.
I had a great contractor there, had a great realtor, built a little team in Maryland. And so I was kind of disappointed to leave, but
Sure.
I couldn't really find another house that I thought would work there. So I
Mm,
started looking in Pensacola, started building a network there. I started
there you
understanding the
go.
market to figure out where I'm going to move, where we're going to live, all that stuff. So I then kind of transitioned my attention to Pensacola. And I got pretty frustrated because I was making offers sight unseen down in Pensacola. I ended up getting a rental house that I bought, which was great. It was right across the street from my other rental house that I had there that came up
Mm,
on the market. I just on market made an offer. Great house, got that rented out from a distance. I still hadn't moved there yet.
mm,
And then we found I moved there and it took me another 3 months or so. I almost quit a couple
mm,
times looking for my next flip project. I got frustrated. I felt like, maybe it was a fluke because it was
mm.
about, 6 to 7 months after I sold the last one before I even found another project. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's amazing, looking back on it, you now know that's just the price of admission, right? You and I
yeah.
have helped people get started, and it often does take a lot of time to get the systems and process in place where it really becomes a funnel or a flow, whatever you want to call that.
And
Um,
that sounds overwhelming to people a lot of times, like a system and a process like built. Like I love systems, I love process, all that stuff. But effectively what it came down to was I wasn't making near enough offers. I just wasn't
exactly.
making enough offers. I wasn't taking enough action. I was doing things that I thought they were keeping me busy, but they weren't really moving the needle. So if I look back, I remember almost quitting. We were making like maybe an offer a week or two offers a week. It just wasn't
Mm,
enough.
not
And I
enough.
wasn't
Yeah.
sending enough mail. I wasn't driving enough leads. I wasn't doing the things. I wasn't investing enough money into finding the next opportunity. I was just thinking that, oh, if I work a little bit harder, it's going to work.
Mm,
Enough money or enough time. And so
yeah.
I just remember I was listening to a lot of like Bigger Pockets podcasts around that
Yep.
time, and I
hmm
was off free everything. Like I was watching free stuff everywhere. I never paid for anything. I didn't even pay for a book at that point. I had a library card that I would go to the library, and if the book wasn't available that I wanted, I would wait 2 or 3 months until it was available. It was
Mm,
ridiculous. So cheap.
yeah. Yeah.
And I heard somebody say, they bought a house at a estate sale. And
Mm,
so like I was literally about to quit. I remember I told my wife, I was like, okay, we flipped this house. Like maybe I should just fly. Well, I'll retire from the Navy. I'll keep buying a couple rentals here and there, but
yeah.
maybe this flipping thing is just a dream. Like it's just not for me. Everybody else could do it. And I
Mm,
was in my flight suit on the way home from work, and there was a sign for an estate sale. And so I just drove over there and I got out of my car, walked in, and just started looking around. And the
mm,
guy was there who's Mom was selling the house. The husband, his dad had just passed away, and
Mhm.
his mom was there, and him. And I just said to him, I said, "Hey, if you ever are interested in selling this house, I'd love to make you an offer." He said, "Well, we have a realtor coming next week, but you can come make an offer if you want, for sure." And I ended up, long story short, I bought the house, fixed it up, and that was my second flip. It took me another
Mm,
6 months, but we made $45,000 on that house. So now I got a $43,000 house in 2013. Now I'm in 2014. I got a $45,000 profit. And now I say, okay, this
mm,
does work. I got to figure this out. And then to what you said, Michael, building a system and a process, that was the next step of how do I build out systems so that
right.
I can do this consistently. And it's not every 6 months here and there. And then I
Mhm.
focus only on this project for 6 months. And it takes me a year to do one flip a year every single year. So
Yeah.
how do I do this more consistently? That was next.
Yeah. Well, let's remind people again, kind of your journey, right? You went from doing basically one a year, then you did how many, and then we'll talk about the pivots because you were doing a lot more than one a year at some point.
Yeah, that was so I did those 2 years. It was one a year, and then I bought like one or two rental houses each year too. I take the profits and I kind of put them into a rental house
Smart.
and BRRRR the rental houses. I did all this buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat that. So
Hmm.
then I did then I did 67 in about 8.5 months. And then I did that. So that
Wow.
was the next year, 67 houses. 12 of those were flips, 55 were wholesale deals. And then
Okay.
I did 135 the next year, and then I did 187 the year after that. And then I did about 200 a year for quite some time through about COVID. And then we started looking at the business and the structure and just how much it would take to continue to do 200. So we're
Yeah.
doing about 50 or 60 a year now.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Because again, yeah, there was a time where you couldn't do any wrong. The market is up and to the right. You might as well keep the pedal down. The market shifts. You gotta shift with it. So I like all of that.
And
Why
honestly,
don't we
my 200 house a year business, as it got more expensive to find deals, that business margin, the margin for me as the owner, started decreasing. And
of
so as that
course.
started happening, like we were talking about pivoting, we just really had to look at the company, the amount of expenses that we had, the risk that was being taken by the company, and just make a change.
Yeah, so let's talk about again, kind of telling the story. How do you go from doing one a year to 67 again, 12 flips, 55 wholesales? What happened different in Bill Allen to kind of
Yeah.
make that leap?
I would say like I stopped being cheap. I started realizing that I was the best asset that was available to make money and build my net worth and grow my income for me and my family is like my mindset and me. Like I'm the best person to invest in. And
Mm,
so the money started coming out of the stock market. It started saying, okay, I can control this real estate thing. I know what I'm doing. I'm starting to get a little bit better. And I had to get around people that were doing hundreds of houses a year. Really, and my goal that next year was to do 12. I just want to do 12. I was like, if
there
I
you
do
go. Okay.
12
Yeah.
at about a $30,000 average, I'm making $350,000. I make like 100 grand in the military.
Right.
That would change my life. Like making $300,000 a year would change my life. On top of my 100 grand, I still didn't want to fly, retire from the Navy. That was the plan. And so I needed to get around people that were doing the same thing. But like I said, I didn't even buy a book, let alone pay for an event or a course or anything. I was just watching free stuff all the time. And I just didn't know what to listen to. There was so much noise, like even
Mhm.
less noise than there is now. So as much noise as we have, but it was so confusing. Like somebody would
Right.
tell me to do something, and then somebody else would tell me to do something else, and then somebody else would say to do something else on a podcast or in a book. And I feel like I had all the puzzle pieces. I just couldn't figure out how to put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And I just needed a map. And if somebody gave me a map, then I could do it. Like I was confident that I could do it. And so I was listening to this guy. His name was Justin Williams. Listening to his podcast. It was called House Flipping HQ at the time. And he had just launched this mastermind group called Seven Figure Flipping, and it was $25,000. And so I was freaking out. I was like, this is, I can't, like, can I pay this? Like,
You
should
didn't
I
buy a
do
$20
it?
book, and the first thing you buy is a
The,
$25,000.
no, that's not a joke. Literally, the
No, I
first thing
know.
I
Yeah.
bought was a $25,000 program called Seven Figure Flipping.
Yeah.
And it was challenging. I didn't, and what's interesting when I look back, I compared that $25,000 to a car. I remember calling my
Ah,
dad and thinking like, my Acura cost $25,000.
yeah.
And this thing cost $25,000. Like I could buy a car with this money. So I was
Mm,
comparing an investment in myself, which I didn't even understand. I thought it was a cost. I thought it was me spending money. to a liability like a vehicle.
Yeah.
It just is a horrible comparison. When I look back, I was like, my mindset was so jacked up when it came to money. Money
Mm.
was to me something to buy things.
Yeah.
And then I would invest in like the stock market. Like I thought the stock market was the place that I put my money, or now real estate, not in myself, like never in
Right.
myself. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, the government paid $1.6 million, your tax dollars, thank you very much, paid $1.6 million for me to go to test pilot school. That's just test pilot school. It also paid for
Mm.
my grad school, paid for my undergrad school at Georgia Tech. And so probably $2 million in education. I had formal education,
Right.
but zero in self-education, like investing in myself. And
Yeah.
so that was the pivot and shift that I had to make in my mind.
Yeah. And again, that is it's really funny that we bring this up because we're going to get to this at the end. You're doing something called Teenage Tycoon, which I think is going to be game changing for folks to get around it. Um, but it really this is important. A lot of us, myself included, have been very clear. I always see myself as an employee. I was raised to go to school, get good grades, get a good job, climb the ladder, and I thought that was okay. I didn't have a light bulb moment until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Unfortunately, I didn't read Rich Dad Poor Dad until I was 30 or 31. I'd already lost 80% of my net worth in a stock market crash, felt like a complete failure. And that book is not a how-to book, but it's a book that turned on a new light switch that I didn't even know was there. So I loved it. We're going to get into Teenage Tycoon in a minute, but I think this is an important inflection point is yeah, you could go to school, get a good career. Being a pilot, I'm sure in the military is a great career, but sometimes you do need to invest in yourself and see yourself as that investment. And admittedly, is something that I'm not great at as well. But you spend 25 grand, you do sign that check, the check clears. You now get in a room with people where, frankly, you're the smallest guy. But I'm sure you were just soaking it all in. Tell us about that first day, maybe, that first morning, those first 4 hours. Did you already know that it was a wise investment or what happened?
Yeah. So the first thing that happened was you're right. I was the smallest fish in the room, basically. I kind of embellished a little bit on my application
Of course
to,
you
um,
did.
to like make it sound like I was doing a lot. And
Yeah.
Justin legitimately told me, he's like, when we found out who you were and when you showed up to the first event and you're talking about what you're doing, we were worried that we shouldn't have let you in. Like we were really concerned that you're bringing down the average of the group because people in there were doing, I'd say Mike Simmons was probably the guy who was the biggest in there at the time, other than Andy McFarlane and Justin Williams. And Mike and his partner were doing like four deals a month, 3 or 4
Wow.
deals a month, and other people were doing like a deal a month. So is
Mm.
it people who were just like ramping up and getting going. And I'd say I remember even before I got there, I got on a call with Andy McFarlane, and he changed my entire mindset on hiring and being like what systems and
Ah.
processes really are. So I got a couple calls with him before showing up to the first event, and I'm glad I did because I remember flying out to California for the first event. It was in San Clemente. It was at this like motel basically, and I didn't know anyone. I was really uncomfortable. I flew out to San Diego, saw my cousin for a day, and then I rented a car and drove up there. And I was just so nervous. I like never done anything like this before, never even been to an event, don't know anybody in the room at all. Had like 2 calls with Andy. I remember seeing Justin walk around, but he was this like a guy who
Mythical
had a
feature. Yeah.
podcast who I
Yeah.
was like, he's like the biggest celebrity I've ever met in my life other than LL Cool J in Atlanta one time. And it was just so surreal that I was like, are people even going to show up? Like, is
Yeah.
this legitimate? I just paid $25,000. So it was interesting. But before that, Andy changed my mindset on hiring. I had actually
Mm.
hired my first person by this point, like a month
Mm.
before. Like you talked about fast action. I was really fighting hiring. It's not something I wanted to do, but I had no time. So he showed me exactly how to hire, how to put together a pay package, like work through that. And then I had also been connected with one of the other members who wanted to passively invest money.
Mm.
So he didn't want to be active, but he had a lot of money. And so me and him actually started doing some JVs.
Okay.
And before I even showed up, we were doing in the process of doing 2 flips that I was buying at auction together.
Nice.
So I had actually taken action and seen some progress before showing up there. So
Nice.
I mean, that was a huge win right out of the gate, is finding a money
Yeah.
lender who we did 50-50 JVs. He lived in California, I lived in Pensacola, and he funded everything and I was doing all the work. And
Yeah.
so we had some projects lined up that were already going to net me probably 30K, like two houses, 30K profit each, so 60K.
Right.
And I mean, I already had almost like in my
Yeah.
mind, had my membership back. Like
Yeah.
that was from
Nice
the
stuff.
first month.
Oh,
And
that's
then I
awesome.
showed up there in the first few hours, just meeting the people and the kind of people that they attracted. So like the integrity in those folks,
Hmm.
the heart there, and just listening to Mike Simmons talk for like 4 hours about what they were doing. I had 40 pages of notes of stuff that I mean,
Yeah.
I had a book full of information that I brought back. And for
Mhm.
me, it was just about implementing the one or two things that made the most sense for me at the time.
Yeah.
And it was something I'd never been a part of, is a group like that where people are like talking about everything that they're doing and sharing it all.
Hmm.
And I attribute it back to kind of like the fraternity that I was in or other places that I like paid for a membership to be around people that I feel like were very much like me, that I enjoyed being with,
Hmm.
where I'm basically like paying for my friends,
Yep.
which I mean, being in a fraternity and being in the military, like I already know that, like I've already done that. So it was really great. I mean, it just, they
Hmm.
put together a great room. It was a curated community of other like-minded people. And
Hmm.
honestly, one thing that I haven't ever really talked about much is Andy and Justin are members of the LDS church. So most people would say they're Mormon. What I realized there is when we showed up, it was a community of like no drinking, no cussing, no like it was a great family value type place
Mm.
and a very religion centered community. Now I'm a Christian, but it was very much like that. And
Hmm.
what I loved is in the evenings, we weren't going out like in the military. I was drinking a lot. I
Yeah.
was, I just wasn't in a great environment there. And
Right.
so going to this place, we were out talking about business, talking about the stuff I love. And I found a place that like accepted me and liked me. And I didn't have to be intoxicated. I had to be
Mm.
this like, I felt like my
Yeah.
whole life, that's kind of the
Yeah.
person that I had to be to fit in and get along in the military and other places that I put myself in. I mean, that's my fault. It's my fault. And so
Hmm.
it just opened up a whole new door for me to kind of just change into the person that I really feel like I should be. And so it
That's
was really
awesome.
cool. Like that was an intangible that I really ever really talk about. So
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely, and again, you've continued that on. I've been lucky enough to be a part of a couple of your events, and that still holds true. Everything you've just went through is fun. It is family oriented. Kids are there. I think it's great that you
yeah,
allow kids to come for free, which is a huge thing to do. That's awesome. And so let's kind of fast forward a little bit. You and I know each other now. We've been to a couple events together. In the last year or so, I've seen you even double down on investing in yourself. I saw you make some commitments with Russell Brunson, I believe Russell Brunson, and then also Tony Robbins. So
yeah.
talk about, you know, you're not done, right? You go to this, you're on my Mount Rushmore of investors, the top four, but you're still looking to grow, get uncomfortable, evolve as a man. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like once you start investing in yourself, once you start doing this, it becomes something that becomes a part of you. You see the
Mhm.
growth, you see the progress, you see the results, you see the fruit. And it's really about like planting the seeds and watering the roots, right? And so when you see the fruit of this, you're like, okay, I need to figure out the next thing. So I mean, I have a coach for basically everything in my life. When I look back, I was a very competitive athlete. I had some amazing coaches, but I didn't have to pay for them. Like everybody else paid for them in my life and my career. In military, I had some amazing mentors and leaders, but I didn't have to pay for them. And so now when you leave the military, you leave at like competitive athletics, you got to figure out the people that are pouring into you and how you're continuing to develop. And if you want to grow, you got to be around people that are ahead of where you are. They're in a place that you want to be. They have the life that you want, they have the business that you want, they have those things, and I'm willing to pay to get my seat at the table because that's what it takes. I mean, these people that are running $100 million companies, $1 billion companies, they're not just going to like let you in and let you pick their brain for free. And so
Right.
I totally get that. Like I understand that their time is very valuable, so I'm willing to pay for that transaction, and I know that I'm going to get a multiple on it. So like you said, yeah, I've been going to Tony Robbins events. I've been going to, I love to go to events. I love to go there because I get to see through multiple lenses. I run events, so I get to see the event business. And then I just have a notebook full of notes for myself to get better. When I had a rocky relationship, I bought a relationship course and program of how to get better as a husband and
Hmm.
and a partner. I am investing in like figuring out how to raise my kids the right way. Like, how do I invest in courses there? Like, who's teaching? Who's got the right information? Who's got the family values that I want and those kind of things. Russell is a great example of a marketer, a father, a husband, somebody who I really truly respect. And so I wanted to get close to Russell and in his community. And the leader attracts the
Mm-hmm.
people. So the leader is like the head recruiter. So if the leader has a life and values and those kind of things, then you know the people that they attract are also going to be of like mind and like spirit. And so I am attracted to those kind of places. Like if somebody can curate a room that brings in people like that have great businesses and are also great people, then I want to figure out how to be a part of it. And usually, like you said, I have to write a check to do that. And so I
Right.
have definitely doubled down. And you said earlier on in the interview, you said, like, I feel like some of you should probably invest in yourself. I would say all of you, like every single person here should invest in their self
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form. You should be investing in yourself because there's no better return on investment than that. Like
No.
no other, the ROI of the apartment building that you invest in, the stock market, Bitcoin, whatever you're going to invest in, there's no better return than on yourself. And if you don't believe that, that's where you need to work on. Like we other people, coaches, mentors will believe in you sometimes more than you believe in yourself. That's a problem. Go
Mm-hmm.
get some more belief in yourself. And the way that you do that is small micro wins, work with
Mm-hmm.
somebody that will really help you, that's really committed to you. And the challenge I think in the industry is just sniffing out who's good for you and who's not good for you. And the best way to do that is find somebody who has what you want, the values and the life, like the true life that you want, and see past the social media glitz and glamour
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And really try to look at who they are and get next
Yeah.
to them and meet them and ask other people and get some referrals, those kind of things. That's the best way to find a great community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. In fact, Warren Buffett would agree with you 100%. He says the best investment to make is in yourself. There's various quotes of Warren Buffett indicating that. I want to move on to something that I think is going to change. It has a chance to change the school system, frankly, and it certainly will change generations. And this is something that you and I talked about on the podcast. Link below again, that you are very passionate about, and frankly, I want to be a part of, any way I can, and that is Teenage Tycoon. So why don't you give your 1-2 minute kind of overview of what you envision it to become, and then talk about what it is today, and let's just riff on that because I think you're onto something.
Yeah. So what do I want it to become? I want it to become uh, I, I just want it to become a movement of parents and families getting involved in teaching and growing their kids financial education. And that means investment, that means taxes, that means just understanding all the stuff that right now is like the world wants us to be financially illiterate.
They want
And
employees. They just
yeah,
want
for sure.
employees.
And I mean, I think we all understand the history of the school system. I mean, that's really what it was. And I also won't say that if your kids or you want to be an employee, that there's anything wrong with that either.
Absolutely not.
However, most people don't take responsibility for their financial life. They pass
Exactly.
it on to financial planners, uh, family offices, like other people. They don't understand what their tax return looks like. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the documents that they're signing. They don't understand the investment. They don't understand those things. And what I believe is every single one of us should have a foundational financial understanding of where we are because nobody's going to take care of your money like you do at all, ever, period. Nobody, not your brother, not your sister, not your cousin, not your friend, not even your spouse, possibly. Like we all have to take responsibility for that. And most of the adults that I see, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's not your fault. It's the fact that just financial education was not part of our upbringing. It was not something we were taught in school. We spend the majority of the time there. And if our parents didn't pass it down to us, then we're on our own to learn about it. And it's actually like it's it seems overwhelming because all these other institutions make it overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like your mortgage documents, what 150 pages that you sign,
Crazy.
the prospectus of a stock that you're investing in is like 150 pages in small print that gets sent to you in the mail. Your financial planner is probably charging you 1% just to manage your money, and then they're getting cuts on the recommendations of the stocks and bonds and mutual funds that they're telling you to invest in. Like all of this stuff is designed to line other people's pockets and take money out of yours. So why don't we take the responsibility back? Why don't we say that, hey, okay, I don't think I need you managing my money anymore. Like I can make good decisions myself, better decisions actually. If we start getting more informed, we start understanding. So I want to teach the kids when they're young the stuff that we didn't learn when we were
Mhm.
kids. And
Yeah,
when
when
you
I
look at
when
Rich Dad Poor Dad, like
yep.
that's it. Like it's like, what if we could all have the rich dad? What if we could all have this kind of conversation? What if we could all could and bring families in where
Hmm.
they can learn together, where the parents are looking over the shoulder of the kids on the calls. They're watching the videos. The kids are coming to dinner and say, "Mommy and Daddy, do you know what your marginal tax rate is? Do you understand
Nah,
there's a
yeah.
difference between effective tax rate and marginal tax rate? Because that's what I learned today on my Teenage Tycoon video.
Yeah.
And what if I can turn these kids into tycoons, like good tycoons, right?
Hmm.
Money, they we make them wealthy, wealthy in their mind and wealthy in their bank account when they're still teenagers. What if we can create millionaires in their teens? Like it's
Yeah.
possible. And just inspire them to stop saying that something's wrong with me because I don't like school and start
Mm.
learning the things that they're interested in and really encouraging them, whatever that may be. Maybe it's e-commerce, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's stocks, maybe it's content creation and YouTube. Like
Yeah.
it could be anything. We bring all these different people in to teach them. So that's the future, I think, is a movement-based mission on helping young people and adults and families take control of their financial life, and then also opening up that conversation at the table in your family. And whether your kids are teaching you or you're teaching your kids, and we're all learning together, like having someone else who's opening up that conversation inside the household to be able to talk about it and learn together and hopefully get them excited about money so it's not something negative.
Yeah.
That like when I was growing up, money was negative. Like it was
Me
we
too.
didn't have it. So
Yeah.
so it brought on this like, oh, they have it, we don't kind of mentality a lot. And we wanted it, but we didn't have it. So I don't know. My dad is a little bit, I love my dad. He's one of my biggest mentors, but definitely like a Democrat, socialist kind of conversation around money
Yeah.
and really just, but I love it because he's so giving. He wants to spread it out. He doesn't really
Yeah.
care about it that much, but it was a
Mm.
little different for me. So
Yeah.
all of these things, that's the vision and excitement
Yeah.
for me.
I think there's another thing I want to add to that I think there are you're Generation X as I am, right? Gen X. And there are so many things that our generation talks about as missteps that we almost smile and joke about, right? For example, buying that first expensive car, right? Got a full time job, got to go buy the new whip. Credit cards. I remember going to college and they had, beer cozies and all these other things for signing up for credit cards and not knowing anything about that. Um, just, having your lifestyle increases, your wages went up and student debt, right? Not knowing that, hey, what's the ROI going to be of this, right? You now you're an adult and you're asking me to sign up for two. There's all of these things that we as 40 and 50-year-olds know are a mistake. We've made them. We have the scars. If we could just have that conversation with teenagers, just so it's in the back of their head to second guess, I think we could prevent a lot of missteps. And then the other thing we talked about on the, again in the link below is I believe if you can get to a high school senior or below and ask them the following question, hey, can you live on 2,500 bucks a month? Which every senior I've ever asked says yes. Um, they could be financially free by 25 or 26. I mean, that's something to go for. That's a teenage tycoon. That's the right mindset. That's a plan. Don't go buy the $40,000 car when you make 30 grand a year, right? I did that. Don't do that. That's stupid. Um, there's so many things you could do. And then if you can have your life paid at 25, you're not balling, but you have options and choices and freedom. And I just think you're going to change generations. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and you know what we found recently, Michael? Actually, we had somebody come in who paid in full for their membership, and they were a homeschool mom in Texas, and
Hmm.
Texas had a grant for them to teach something to their kids that they weren't trained to teach, and they got our syllabus approved. So the
Oh,
state
wow.
of Texas actually paid for their whole family's membership,
Oh,
and
my
then
goodness.
California does the same thing. So California has a grant also for homeschool families to pay for things like this. And so now we're
Hmm.
looking at all the different states that have this. So there's so many different things that are coming from this of because the families are not having these conversations. A lot of these families that are homeschooling, they want their kids to have
Yeah.
this. And so do the public school families. I mean, this is something that um, it's not taught in school, period. Like
No,
really not. So some of the
dude, it's
homeschool
not
families,
taught in college.
yeah, totally. I mean, especially on our interview, you're talking about having an MBA, coming
Yeah,
out as an accountant, and like just basically not having the financial literacy you have now that you wish you had. And so a
yeah,
lot of mine came from my dad passing some things down and me learning over time. And the other thing I see is like when you have a coach, when you try to coach your kids and your family, it's really challenging, but they'll listen to somebody else. So
yeah,
my goal is to bring
yes,
in some experts along the way, myself and other experts that I know that I've been able to network with and build relationships with to come teach to these kids, talk to our kids, teach them mindset, teach them actual like actionable things they can do if they want to start a business, if they want to sell things online, if they want to become marketers, if they want to become YouTubers, like all the things that our kids want to do right now, we bring the experts in to talk to them. And then we lead them through a course, we lead them through a actual like we have actual books that we're reading, like book reports and things like that, actual things that the kids are going to read. And so books about money, like The Millionaire Next Door was one of my favorite books that I ever read as a kid. And I
mm-hmm,
was in my
mm-hmm.
20s. When I say kid, I was in my 20s when I read it. But like read it, can you imagine reading that book when you're like 13, 14 years old? And there it is. Like, and that book is phenomenal for a mindset around money
Mm-hmm.
and becoming like saving instead of spending. Like you don't need the Ferrari. Just go get the $15,000 used car and put the rest of it towards investment, those kind of things. And so leading and guiding these families and these kids through it and hopefully bringing you along with it, like the parents along with them. So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
that's the vision and the purpose and the path and just seeing all these other options of some of these folks that are coming into our membership and having it like fully paid for has been incredible to watch.
yeah.
Like I didn't
Grants.
know this
That's
was possible.
going to be fun to watch. If somebody's looking at this, maybe they live in Texas, California, or they just want to know more about what's going on here. Where do we send them?
I think we should put a link in the description
Okay,
for that.
all right,
Does
we
that
will do
work?
that. Yeah, of
Let's
course.
do that.
Put a link in the description. Again, there is a syllabus. It sounds like where somebody wanted to reach out via the link.
Yeah,
They could
yeah,
go
if
this.
anybody's like, I'm a homeschool parent, I just heard about this. Like, there's other states too that do this. I think we found 6 or 7 of them off the top of my head. I want to say like Washington and a couple other like Midwest states. If you want to get the syllabus or find out more about it, you can just send us an email, info@sevenfigureflipping.com. So info at the number 7figureflipping.com, and we'll get you the full syllabus. We have all the paperwork that this other woman went through
Hmm.
and we can help you get all this stuff approved if you have a grant in your state.
There you go. Well, let's go back to like if you're a parent, you're looking at this, you're interested whether or not you're homeschool or not. Um, what's too young? What do you think's too young?
Yeah, so we have some folks. I built this basically for my 9-year-old.
Okay.
So my 9-year-old reads at more advanced level. So he's a huge reader and a bookworm. Like we're
Okay.
driving around in the car, he's reading a book. Right now
Hmm.
it's like Captain Underpants and like some other books, but I've got him into like Way of the Warrior Kid, like Jocko's kids books and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah, there you go.
So next is like me making this really, I think like 6th grade to 12th grade is ideal for the
Okay.
book club. So the actual books that we're going to be reading in that age, but we have kids down to like 6 and 7 that are
Mm,
coming in to be on the calls. And usually that's a younger sibling of somebody
right.
who's maybe 9 years old and up. So I'd
Okay.
recommend if you have a more advanced, like 9 or 10-year-old, it's probably good for them. But really, we designed it for like 6th to 12th grade. But it's totally up to you. We'll tell
Yeah.
you what it is. We'll talk through it. And the only thing we require is for the books that we're doing is that they're 6th through 12th grade. So you can read
Got it.
along with it, but to be on the calls and participate with a lot of those things and be really active, it's a challenge when you have a 16, 17, and 18-year-old with like a 9-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And so if it starts growing and the kids start, you know, we get a lot of like spread in ages, then what we'll
Hmm.
do is we'll start splitting them up. But the
Makes
book clubs, ideal is 6th grade to 12th grade to be on the book club calls,
hmm
which are once a week. And then we have calls with other entrepreneurs every other week. So we'll have 25 calls this year
mm,
with my friends. So like Russell Brunson, you mentioned, he's going to be on a call. Um, I've got a good friend of mine, Jamie Cross, who runs a soap and wellness company that sells online.
mm,
She's going to come talk to the kids. I've got Donald Miller, who's a New York Times bestselling author. He wrote a book called Building a Story Brand.
mm,
He's going to come talk to the kids. Nick Santanastaso is a huge public speaker, tours with Tony Robbins.
mm.
He's going to come talk to the kids. It's growing and stacking the number of people that are going to come. Oh, Walter Bond is a
Oh yeah, yeah.
international public speaker. He's in the Public Speaking Hall of Fame. He's an NBA basketball player, business coach, and a consultant now. He's going to come talk to the kids. And that's right after they all read the book Swim, which is his book. So they'll be able to talk to the author right afterwards.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the video course. So the video course, the calls with other entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders, they those are fine for any ages. And the families, like the parents they're going to look over the shoulder. Like, and I said, I'm going to get Tony Robbins to come talk to the kids in the next 3 years. Hopefully it's in the next year, but definitely in the next 3 years. That's my promise to everyone. So it's,
Uh,
start growing like that. And anybody the kids say, hey, I wish we could hear from this person or this person. It might be a financial person. It might be someone on YouTube. I'm working on a bunch of YouTubers now to come talk to the kids about actual YouTube because that's what they want to do, these content creators. And so things like that, the feedback we get, we'll invite them in.
there you go. Where can people follow you? You're putting out a lot of stuff. You have a growing YouTube channel. I follow you on Instagram. Where should we send people?
Yeah, I think my personal YouTube channel will have a link to the interview that you and I did.
Mhm.
Everything really is at Bill Allen REI. So my YouTube channel is at Bill Allen REI. So is Instagram and Facebook. So
Folks, give him a follow. Again, he's on my Mount Rushmore. I like how he started, how he likes taking action and learning. This teenage tycoon is something that is going to be fun to watch. Bill, thank you for being here. I appreciate you, man. Take care.
thanks for having me. See ya.
Mhm.